Anthony Reed sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at the divorce papers scattered across his mahogany desk. The ink was still wet from his signature, marking the end of his third marriage in 8 years. He felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, not even the bitter satisfaction he thought might come with finally being free of Catherine's constant demands for attention he couldn't give. His assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "Mr. Reed, your ex-wife is on line 1. She says it's urgent about the settlement." Anthony didn't look up from the papers. "Tell her to speak to my lawyer." "Sir, she's been calling every hour for the past 3 days. She seems quite upset." "Then tell her to speak to her therapist." The assistant shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, if I may, perhaps a brief conversation would help resolve whatever issue." "No." Anthony finally looked up, his gray eyes cold and empty. "I pay you to manage my schedule, not my personal life. Handle it." After the assistant left, Anthony walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 34 years old, worth $2 billion, and he felt like a hollow shell of a man. Every relationship ended the same way. The woman would start excited about his wealth and status, then slowly realize that behind his handsome face and expensive suits was a man who couldn't connect with anyone on a deeper level. He tried to remember the last time he felt genuine emotion. Maybe when his father died 5 years ago. Even then, it was more relief than grief. The old man had been demanding and cold, never satisfied with Anthony's achievements. Now Anthony realized he had become exactly like him. His phone buzzed. Another text from Catherine. "You can't just shut me out like I never existed. We were married for 2 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" It didn't. That was the problem. Anthony had been born with everything: money, looks, intelligence. But somewhere along the way he lost the ability to feel anything real for another person. Women came and went like seasons. He would enjoy their company for a while, maybe even convince himself he cared, but inevitably the emptiness would return. They would beg him to open up, to share his feelings, to love them the way they loved him. But there was nothing to share. He had tried everything. Therapy, meditation, even medication for a brief period. Nothing worked. The doctors said he wasn't depressed or mentally ill. He was just empty. Like a beautiful house with no one living inside. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the look in women's eyes when they finally understood that he would never love them the way they loved him. Catherine had that look for months before she finally filed for divorce. Before her, Sarah had lasted 3 years trying to crack through his walls. Before Sarah, it was Jennifer, who lasted barely 1 year before she couldn't take his emotional distance anymore. Anthony returned to his desk and picked up the latest financial reports. Numbers made sense. Profit and loss were simple concepts. His companies were thriving, his investments growing daily. Money was easy. Feelings were impossible. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Reed? The maintenance company is here about the window blinds in the conference room. They've been broken for weeks." "Fine. Let them in." Anthony didn't bother looking up when the maintenance worker entered. He heard the sound of tools being unpacked and footsteps moving around the conference room adjacent to his office. He tried to focus on the reports, but something kept pulling his attention away. There was humming. Soft, melodic humming coming from the conference room. The tune was familiar, but he couldn't place it. It was pleasant, peaceful even. When was the last time he had noticed something like that? An hour passed. The humming continued, accompanied by the steady sound of work being done. Anthony found himself listening instead of reading. Whoever was in there seemed genuinely happy to be working. When was the last time he felt happy about anything? His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed, the maintenance worker needs to ask you something about the blinds." "Send them in." Anthony looked up as the conference room door opened, expecting to see the usual middle-aged handyman. Instead, a woman walked in. She was tall and lean, with short natural hair and kind brown eyes. Her work clothes were clean but well-worn, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. She was beautiful, but not in the polished way he was used to. This was natural beauty, unpretentious and real. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir. I'm Zara from Henderson Maintenance. I need to know if you want the same type of blinds or if you'd prefer an upgrade. These are pretty old." Her voice matched her humming, warm and genuine. Anthony found himself staring longer than appropriate. "Whatever you think is best." She smiled and something strange happened. For just a moment, Anthony felt a tiny crack in the wall around his heart. It was so brief he almost missed it, but it was there. A flicker of something. "I'd recommend the newer style. They're more energy efficient and easier to clean. A little more expensive up front, but they'll last longer." "That's fine." He was still staring. How long will it take? I should have them installed by end of day tomorrow. I hope the noise isn't bothering you too much. It's not. The humming had been the most pleasant sound he'd heard in months. Take your time. After she left, Anthony sat in his chair feeling confused. Something about that brief interaction felt different. He couldn't explain it, but for those few moments the emptiness inside him had seemed less complete. He shook his head and returned to his work. It was probably nothing. Just another woman who would disappoint him once he got to know her better. But as the afternoon wore on, he found himself listening for the sound of her humming, and wondering why such a simple thing could affect him at all. For the first time in years, Anthony Reed was curious about another person. And that terrified him more than he cared to admit. The next morning, Anthony arrived at his office an hour earlier than usual. He told himself it was to catch up on the quarterly reports, but deep down he knew he was hoping to hear that humming again. The maintenance woman, Azara, had said she would finish the blinds today. His assistant looked surprised to see him so early. "Good morning, Mr. Reed. You're here bright and early. Should I move your 9 o'clock meeting up?" "No, keep everything as scheduled." Anthony walked past her desk quickly, not wanting to explain his unusual behavior. He settled at his desk with his coffee and tried to focus on work, but kept glancing toward the conference room. At 8:30 he heard voices in the hallway. His heart rate picked up slightly, another strange occurrence he couldn't explain. Zara entered the conference room with a box of new blinds and her tool bag. She was wearing the same type of work clothes as yesterday, but today Anthony noticed small details he had missed. The way she moved with purpose and efficiency. The fact that she wore no jewelry except for a simple watch. The small scar on her left hand that suggested she was no stranger to manual work. Within minutes, the humming started again. Today's tune was different. Something bluesy and soulful. Anthony found himself abandoning all pretense of working and simply listening. There was something about her voice that seemed to reach a part of him he thought was permanently closed off. Around 10 o'clock his phone rang. Catherine again. "Anthony, please don't hang up. We need to talk about the house in the Hamptons. My lawyer says." "Your lawyer can talk to my lawyer." Anthony kept his voice low, aware that Zara was in the next room. "This is ridiculous. We lived together for 2 years. We shared a bed, shared meals, shared a life. How can you act like none of that mattered?" The question hit harder than usual. Maybe because for the first time in months he was starting to wonder if he was capable of feeling something real for another person. "Catherine, we've been over this. The marriage is over. The lawyers will handle the details. I loved you, Anthony. I really loved you. Doesn't that count for anything?" He heard the pain in her voice and felt the familiar wall of numbness rise up. "I'm sorry you're hurting. But dragging this out won't change anything." After he hung up, Anthony noticed the humming had stopped. A few minutes later, Zara knocked on his door frame. "I'm sorry I couldn't help overhearing. Are you okay?" Anthony looked up, surprised by the genuine concern in her voice. Most people in his life, employees, business associates, even family, rarely asked how he was doing. And when they did, it was usually perfunctory. "I'm fine. Just business calls." Zara studied his face for a moment. That didn't sound like business. That sounded personal. And painful. Something about her directness caught him off guard. "It's nothing I can't handle. I'm sure you can handle it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." She paused. "I know we don't know each other, but sometimes it helps to talk to someone who isn't involved in your situation." Anthony felt that same crack in his emotional wall from yesterday, only stronger this time. "Why would you care? You're here to fix blinds, not listen to my problems." "Maybe. But I'm also a person and you looked like a person in pain just now. That matters more than window blinds." For a long moment, they looked at each other in silence. Anthony couldn't remember the last time someone had seen past his wealth and status to notice his actual feelings. Most people were either intimidated by his money or trying to get something from him. Zara seemed to see him as simply another human being. "Thank you," he said finally. "But I should let you get back to work." She nodded and returned to the conference room, but something had shifted between them. Anthony found himself paying attention to sounds from the next room with a new kind of awareness. When she took a break around noon, he heard her on the phone. "Hi baby, it's Mama. How was your morning at daycare? Did you eat your lunch?" Her voice was completely different when talking to whoever was on the other end, softer, more tender. "I know you wanted the dinosaur crackers, but remember what we talked about? Sometimes we have to eat what's available and be grateful for it. I'll pick you up at 5:30, okay? I love you too." The conversation revealed two things. Zara had a child and money was clearly tight for them. Anthony found himself wondering about her story. Was she married? Divorced? Had she ever been married at all? How old was her child? He realized he was thinking about another person's life in detail for the first time in years. Usually he learned basic facts about people, their job, their function in his world, and that was enough. But with Zara he wanted to know more. Around 2 o'clock she finished installing the blinds and began cleaning up. Anthony forced himself to stay at his desk instead of finding an excuse to check on her progress. But when she knocked to let him know she was done, he looked up eagerly. They look great. Much better than the old ones. Thank you. I think you'll be happy with them. They should last at least 10 years with proper care. She was gathering her tools when Anthony surprised himself by speaking. Can I ask you something personal? Zara looked up, curious but not defensive. Sure. Earlier when I was on that phone call, why did you care? I mean, you don't know me. I'm just another client. She considered the question seriously. I guess because pain is pain regardless of who's feeling it. Rich or poor, young or old, it hurts the same. And I've been through enough difficult times to recognize when someone else is struggling. What kind of difficult times? The kind that teach you to value genuine human connection when you find it? She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. I should probably get going. I have another job across town, and then I need to pick up my son. How old is he? 6. His name is Tyler, and he's the light of my life. Her whole face lit up when she talked about him. He's in first grade now, learning to read. Every day he comes home with new words he wants to show me. Anthony felt another crack in his emotional wall. There was something beautiful about the way she talked about her son, pure, uncomplicated love. It must be hard working and raising him alone. Some days are harder than others. But we're a team, Tyler and me. We take care of each other. After she left, Anthony sat in his office feeling unsettled. The conference room looked perfect with its new blinds, but he felt an unexpected sense of loss. Zara's presence had brought something into his sterile, emotionally empty world: warmth, authenticity, genuine human connection. For the first time in his adult life, Anthony Reed found himself hoping he would see someone again soon. And that realization scared him more than any business deal or financial risk ever had. Anthony spent the weekend thinking about Zara, which was unusual for him. Normally, his weekends were filled with work calls, golf games with business associates, or obligatory social events where he played the role of successful bachelor. But this weekend he found himself distracted and restless. On Sunday morning, while reviewing contracts at his penthouse apartment, he realized he was looking for excuses to call Henderson Maintenance. Maybe there was something else that needed fixing? The blinds in his home office were getting old. Or perhaps the ones in the conference room needed adjustment already? He caught himself mid-thought and shook his head. This was ridiculous. He was a billionaire CEO, not a teenager with a crush. But even as he tried to dismiss the feelings, he couldn't shake the memory of Zara's genuine concern when she heard his phone conversation with Catherine. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Anthony got to the office early again, though he had no maintenance appointments to anticipate. His assistant noticed his unusual pattern. Mr. Reed, you've been getting here quite early lately. Is everything all right? Fine. Just getting an early start on the day. But everything wasn't fine. Anthony felt restless and unfocused. During his 10 o'clock meeting with department heads, he found his mind wandering. During lunch with potential investors, he barely listened to their pitch. By mid-afternoon, he gave up pretending to work and called Henderson Maintenance. Henderson Maintenance, this is Joan. This is Anthony Reed. I had some blinds installed last week, and I'd like to schedule some additional work. Of course, Mr. Reed. What type of work do you need? Anthony looked around his office desperately. The blinds in my personal office need to be replaced as well. Same style as the conference room. I can schedule that for you. Would Thursday morning work? Actually, I'd prefer to have the same technician who did the conference room. She did excellent work. That would be Zara. Let me check her schedule. She's available Wednesday afternoon. Would 2 o'clock work? Perfect. Anthony hung up feeling slightly foolish but undeniably excited. 3 days felt like an eternity. Tuesday dragged by. Anthony tried to fill his time with work, but nothing held his attention for long. He found himself wondering what Zara and her son Tyler were doing. Was Tyler having a good day at school? Did Zara enjoy her work, or was it just a necessity? What did they do together in the evenings? These were the kinds of personal questions he never asked about anyone. His relationships had always been surface level: dinner, events, physical intimacy, but never deep emotional connection. The idea of truly knowing another person's daily life, their hopes and struggles, was foreign to him. Wednesday finally arrived. Anthony changed shirts twice that morning, then felt ridiculous for caring about his appearance for a maintenance appointment. By 2 o'clock he was pacing his office nervously. Zara arrived exactly on time, carrying her tool bag and looking professional as always. But when she smiled and said hello, Anthony felt that now familiar crack in his emotional walls. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed. I understand you want to replace the blinds in here as well?" "Yes, the same style as the conference room. They worked out very well." "Great choice. These old ones are definitely ready for replacement." She moved to the windows to examine the existing blinds. This should take about the same amount of time as the conference room job. As she worked, Anthony found excuses to stay in his office instead of retreating to the conference room like he usually did during maintenance work. He answered emails, made phone calls, reviewed documents, all while stealing glances at Zara as she worked. She hummed while she worked again, a different tune this time. Something that sounded like an old soul song. Her movements were efficient and graceful, and she seemed genuinely content with her work. "Can I ask you something?" Anthony said during a lull in her humming. "Sure. You seem happy. I mean genuinely happy. Is that an act or do you really enjoy this work?" Zara paused in her work and looked at him thoughtfully. "That's an interesting question. I guess I am happy most of the time. Not because of the work specifically, but because I'm grateful to have work that supports my son and me. And I like solving problems, making things better than they were." "But don't you want more? A different career, more money, more, I don't know, excitement? What kind of more are you thinking of?" Anthony gestured around his expensive office. "This. Success. Power. The ability to buy whatever you want, go wherever you want." "And does that make you happy?" The question caught him completely off guard. No one had ever asked him that directly. It shouldn't it? Should it? I don't know. You tell me." Zara's voice was gentle, not challenging. "You have all those things. Are you happy?" Anthony stared at her, unable to answer. The honest answer was no, he wasn't happy. He wasn't really anything. But admitting that felt too vulnerable, too dangerous. "I'm sorry," Zara said quickly. "That was too personal. I didn't mean to pry." "No, it's a fair question. I just don't think about happiness much. I think about success, achievement, growth. Happiness seems like a luxury I don't have time for. Maybe that's the problem." "What do you mean?" "Maybe happiness isn't a luxury. Maybe it's the whole point." They worked in comfortable silence for a while after that, but Anthony couldn't stop thinking about her words. When had he stopped thinking about happiness? Had he ever thought about it? His father had raised him to think about achievement, competition, winning. Feelings were weaknesses to be controlled or eliminated. But watching Zara work, listening to her gentle humming, seeing the natural contentment in her movements, Anthony began to wonder if he had been approaching life completely wrong. "Can I ask you something now?" Zara said as she measured the final window. "Of course. That phone call the other day, your ex-wife, right? You looked so sad after you hung up. Do you miss her?" Anthony considered lying, giving a simple answer that would end the conversation. Instead he found himself being honest. "No, I don't miss her. I don't think I ever really connected with her in the first place. That's the problem, I don't seem to connect with anyone." "That must be lonely." "It is." The admission surprised him. He had never said that out loud before. "Have you always felt that way?" "For as long as I can remember. I thought maybe it was just how I was built. Some people are naturally warm and connected, others aren't." Zara finished her measurements and looked at him seriously. "I don't think that's true. I think everyone has the capacity for connection. Sometimes it just gets buried under other things." "What kind of other things?" "Fear. Hurt. Old patterns that don't serve us anymore." She packed up her measuring tools. "I should have these new blinds installed by Friday. Same time?" "That works." As she prepared to leave, Anthony felt a sense of panic. 2 more days felt too long. "Zara, can I ask you one more thing?" "Sure. Would you like to have coffee sometime? Just to talk. You're easy to talk to, and I don't have many people in my life who are genuinely honest with me." Zara studied his face carefully. "Mr. Reed, I appreciate the offer, but I should probably keep things professional. I have a son to think about, and getting involved with clients can get complicated." Anthony felt a stab of disappointment that was sharper than he expected. "Of course. I understand. But," she said softly, "if you ever need someone to talk to about real things, not business, just life, I'm a good listener." And I don't judge people for struggling with difficult emotions. After she left, Anthony sat in his office feeling more confused than ever. He was attracted to Zara, but it was more than physical attraction. For the first time in his life, he wanted to know someone completely, their thoughts, their dreams, their fears. He wanted to be known by someone in return. The realization that his emotional walls might actually be capable of coming down was both terrifying and exhilarating. But Zara had made it clear that she wasn't interested in anything beyond professional interaction. Anthony Reed, who had never been rejected by a woman in his adult life, discovered that wanting something he couldn't have felt entirely different from everything else he had experienced. And for the first time he wondered if that might actually be a good thing. Thursday and Friday crawled by. Anthony found himself checking his watch constantly, counting down the hours until Zara would return to install the new blinds. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept wandering to their conversation about happiness and connection. That evening Anthony did something he hadn't done in years. He called his younger sister Emma. They talked maybe 3 times a year, usually around holidays or family emergencies. Emma lived in Portland, worked as a social worker, and had always been everything Anthony wasn't. Warm, empathetic, emotionally available. "Anthony? Is everything okay? You never call." "I'm fine. I just wanted to talk." "Talk? About what? Did something happen with one of your companies?" "No, nothing like that. More personal, I guess." There was a long pause. "Okay, this is weird. You don't do personal. What's going on?" Anthony stared out the window of his penthouse at the city lights below. "Do you think I'm capable of loving someone? Really loving them?" "Well, okay. That's definitely not what I expected you to ask." Emma's voice softened. "What brought this on? Just answer the question. Honestly." "Anthony, of course you're capable of love. But you've spent so many years protecting yourself that I think you've forgotten how to let people in. Why are you asking?" Anthony told her about Zara. Not everything, but enough. How she seemed different from other women he'd known. How she asked real questions and gave honest answers. How she made him feel like there might be parts of himself he hadn't discovered yet. "She sounds wonderful," Emma said when he finished. "And she sounds like she's not interested in your money, which is probably a first for you. She turned down my invitation for coffee. Said she keeps things professional with clients. Smart woman. Especially if she has a child to protect." "What do you mean?" "Anthony, think about your track record. 3 marriages, all ending in divorce. A reputation for being emotionally unavailable. If I were a single mother, I'd be very careful about getting involved with someone like you." The words stung because they were true. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Maybe start by figuring out why this woman is different. What is it about her that's making you feel things you've never felt before?" Anthony thought about it. "She's genuine. She doesn't want anything from me. She sees me as a person, not a bank account or a status symbol. And she's happy with her life, even though it's not easy. I've never known anyone who was genuinely content with less." "Maybe she's content because she has something you don't." "What's that?" "Real connections. Well, purpose beyond accumulating wealth." After they hung up, Anthony couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Emma's words and wondering what it would feel like to have real connections with people. To love someone and be loved in return, not for what he could provide but for who he actually was. Friday afternoon finally arrived. Anthony had changed clothes twice again and felt foolish about it. When Zara knocked on his door at exactly 2 o'clock, his heart rate increased noticeably. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed. Ready for some new blinds?" "Absolutely." As she worked, Anthony found himself studying her more carefully. She moved with quiet confidence, taking pride in doing quality work. When she encountered a problem with one of the window frames, she didn't call for help or complain. She simply figured out a solution and kept working. "You're very good at this," he said during a break in her humming. "Thank you. I've been doing maintenance work for about 3 years now. Before that, I was in office management, but the hours were difficult with Tyler." "What made you change careers?" "Necessity mostly. After Tyler's father left, I needed work that paid decently but had flexible hours. Maintenance work lets me be home with Tyler most evenings and weekends." Anthony felt a surge of anger toward Tyler's father, which surprised him. "How long have you been raising him alone?" "Since he was 2. His father decided that being a parent was too much responsibility." Zara's voice remained neutral, but Anthony detected pain underneath. "It was hard at first, but honestly we're better off without someone who doesn't want to be there." "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was. But it also taught me what really matters. Having people in your life who choose to be there, who show up even when things are hard. That's worth more than anything money can buy. Anthony thought about his own relationships. How many people in his life were there because they chose to be, versus those who were there for what he could give them? Can I ask you something? Zara said as she adjusted the final blind. Of course. The other day when you asked me about coffee, what were you hoping for? I mean, really hoping for? Anthony considered giving a safe answer, but something about Zara made him want to be honest. I wanted to know you better. To have a real conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from me. You're the first person in years who's made me feel like there might be more to life than work and achievement. And what would happen if you found out there was more to life? Would you be willing to change how you live? I don't know. Change is scary when you've built your whole identity around one way of being. Zara nodded thoughtfully. I can understand that. But sometimes staying the same is scarier than changing, especially when staying the same means staying lonely. She finished packing her tools and stood to leave. At the door she paused and turned back. Mr. Reed, can I share something with you? Please. 3 years ago when Tyler's father left, I thought my life was over. I had to start completely over, new job, new home, new identity as a single mother. It was terrifying. But it was also the beginning of the happiest period of my life because for the first time, I was living authentically. I wasn't trying to be who someone else wanted me to be. What's your point? Maybe you're not as stuck as you think you are. Maybe the life you've built isn't the only life you could have. After she left, Anthony sat in his office with the late afternoon sun filtering through his new blinds. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a different kind of life. One where he came home to people who were genuinely happy to see him. Where he had conversations about more than business and money. Where he felt connected to something larger than his own success. It was a beautiful vision. It was also terrifying because it would require him to tear down every wall he had spent 34 years building. But as Anthony watched the sun set over the city, he realized that the walls that had protected him from pain had also protected him from joy. And maybe, just maybe, the risk of being hurt was worth the possibility of being truly happy. For the first time in his life, Anthony Reed began to consider the possibility that he might be willing to change everything for the chance to feel something real. The weekend after Zara finished the blinds felt different to Anthony. Instead of his usual routine of work calls and social obligations, he found himself walking through Central Park, observing families and couples in a way he never had before. He watched a father teaching his young daughter to ride a bike, saw the patient encouragement and genuine joy on the man's face when she finally managed a few wobbly pedals on her own. Anthony tried to remember if his father had ever looked at him that way. He couldn't recall a single memory of his father showing genuine pride or joy in his presence. Everything had been about achievement, about becoming worthy of the family name and fortune. On Sunday he drove past a playground and found himself stopping to watch children play while their parents chatted nearby. He spotted a woman who reminded him of Zara, tall, graceful, watching her son with obvious love and pride. The boy was around 6, maybe Tyler's age, and when he ran to his mother with excitement about conquering the monkey bars, she dropped everything to celebrate with him. Anthony wondered what it would feel like to have someone light up when they saw him, not because of what he could do for them, but simply because they loved his company. Monday morning brought him back to reality. His assistant informed him that Catherine's lawyer had called twice, there were 3 urgent meetings about the acquisition deal, and his accountant needed to discuss tax implications of the latest merger. But even surrounded by the familiar world of business and finance, Anthony found his thoughts drifting to Zara and Tyler. Were they having a good morning? Did Tyler like school? What did Zara do in the evenings after her work was done? Around noon, Anthony made an impulsive decision. He called Henderson Maintenance. Henderson Maintenance, this is Joan. This is Anthony Reed. I was wondering if you could give me some information about one of your employees, Zara. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed, but I can't share personal information about our employees. Is there something specific about her work that you need to discuss? Anthony felt foolish. No, her work was excellent. Never mind. Thank you. He hung up feeling frustrated and a little desperate. He wanted to see Zara again to continue their conversations, but she had made it clear she preferred to keep things professional. And he had no legitimate reason to call for more maintenance work. That afternoon, while reviewing contracts, Anthony had an idea. It was risky and possibly foolish, but it was the only way he could think of to see Zara again in a natural setting. He called Henderson Maintenance back. Joan, this is Anthony Reed again. I wanted to schedule some maintenance work for my home. Several projects, actually. Of course, Mr. Reed. What type of work do you need? Anthony looked around his penthouse apartment. The blinds in the master bedroom need replacement. And the living room. Also, there's a squeaky door hinge in the kitchen, and the bathroom faucet has been dripping. I can schedule someone for next week. Would you prefer the same technician who worked on your office? Yes, if she's available. Let me check Zara's schedule. She could be there Wednesday morning. Would 10 o'clock work? Perfect. Anthony spent the next 2 days in a state of nervous anticipation he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. He found himself cleaning his already spotless apartment and wondering what Zara would think of his home. Would she see it as impressive, or would the obvious expense make her uncomfortable? Wednesday morning, Anthony took the unusual step of working from home. When the doorman called to announce Zara's arrival, Anthony felt his pulse quicken. She knocked on his door at exactly 10 o'clock, carrying her familiar tool bag and wearing her usual work clothes. But seeing her in his personal space felt different somehow, more intimate. Good morning, Mr. Reed. I understand you have several projects for me today. Yes, come in. Thank you for accommodating the house call. Zara stepped into his penthouse and Anthony watched her take in the space. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city. The furniture was expensive and tasteful, chosen by a professional decorator. Everything was perfect and impersonal. Beautiful apartment, she said politely. Thank you. Where would you like to start? Why don't you show me everything that needs work, and I'll figure out the most efficient order. Anthony gave her a tour, pointing out the various issues he had invented. As they walked through his home, he found himself seeing it through her eyes. It was beautiful, but it felt more like a hotel suite than a place where someone actually lived. There were no personal photos, no books that showed his interests, no signs that a real person with real emotions lived there. Do you spend much time here? Zara asked as they finished the tour in the living room. I sleep here. Most of my time is spent at the office. That's a shame. It's a beautiful space, but it feels... She paused, clearly trying to find a diplomatic way to express her thoughts. Empty? Anthony supplied. I was going to say waiting. Like it's waiting for someone to actually live in it. The observation stung because it was accurate. Anthony had lived in this apartment for 5 years, but he had never made it a home. It was just another possession, expensive and impressive but not meaningful. Let me start with the bedroom blinds, Zara said, pulling out her measuring tape. These are quite old. How long have you lived here? 5 years. And you've never replaced the blinds? I never noticed them before. Zara looked at him curiously. What made you notice them now? Anthony could have given a dozen safe answers, but something about being in his own home with her made him want to be honest. You made me notice them. After you replaced the ones in my office, I started seeing things differently. What do you mean? I started paying attention to my environment instead of just existing in it. I started noticing details, wanting things to be better, more comfortable. More like a real home. Zara began measuring the bedroom windows, her movements efficient and practiced. What would a real home feel like to you? Anthony leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. I honestly don't know. I've never had one. Growing up, our house was like a museum. Beautiful but untouchable. And my marriages? We lived in beautiful spaces, but they never felt warm or welcoming. What about when you were a kid? Didn't you have a favorite spot where you felt safe and happy? Anthony thought hard. There was a treehouse my grandfather built before he died. I was maybe 8 years old. It was just a simple platform with walls, but it was mine. I used to go there to read or just think. What happened to it? My father had it torn down when I was 12. Said it was an eyesore and I was too old for childish things. Zara stopped measuring and looked at him with something that might have been anger. That's terrible. Every child needs a space that's completely their own. My father believed in preparing me for the real world. Sentiment was a luxury we couldn't afford. That's not preparing someone for the real world. That's teaching them to cut themselves off from the things that make life worth living. As she worked on removing the old blinds, Zara continued asking questions that no one had ever asked him before. What was his favorite color? Did he like to cook? What kind of music did he listen to when no one else was around? Anthony found himself struggling to answer. He had spent so many years focused on what he should want, what was expected of him, that he had lost track of what he actually enjoyed. I don't know, he said after she asked about his favorite type of food. I eat at expensive restaurants or have meals catered. I don't think I have preferences anymore. Everyone has preferences. They might be buried, but they're there. Zara climbed down from the stepladder and looked at him seriously. Can I ask you something personal? You've been asking personal questions all morning. This is different. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Not because it was good for business or socially expected, but because you genuinely enjoyed it? Anthony opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He couldn't think of a single example. I can't remember, he admitted. That's heartbreaking. The simple statement hit him harder than any of his ex-wife's angry accusations ever had. It wasn't said with pity or judgment, just genuine sadness for him. Is that why you asked me to coffee? Zara continued. Because talking to me made you happy? Yes. For the first time in years I was curious about another person. I wanted to know your thoughts, your stories. I wanted you to know mine. Zara nodded thoughtfully and returned to her work. They spent the next hour in comfortable conversation as she moved from room to room, fixing the various issues he had reported. Anthony found himself talking about things he had never shared with anyone: his loneliness, his fear that he was incapable of real connection, his growing realization that success without meaningful relationships felt hollow. Can I tell you something? Zara said as she tightened the loose bathroom faucet. Please. When I first met you, I thought you were probably like most wealthy men I've encountered, polite but dismissive, focused on efficiency rather than connection. But the more we talk, the more I realize you're not cold or unfeeling. You're just scared. Scared of what? Of being rejected for who you really are instead of what you can provide. Of letting someone see the real you and having them decide you're not enough. Anthony felt exposed, as if she had seen right through all his carefully constructed defenses. And what if they're right? What if I'm not enough? Then they're not the right person for you. But you'll never know until you try being yourself with someone. By the time Zara finished all the repairs, it was nearly 3 o'clock. Anthony felt a familiar sense of panic as she packed up her tools. He didn't want her to leave. Zara, I know you said you prefer to keep things professional, but I have to ask. Would you consider letting me take you and Tyler to dinner? Nothing romantic, just, I'd like to meet him. And I'd like to continue getting to know you both. Zara paused in her packing. Why? Because you're the first person in years who makes me want to be better than I am. Because when I'm around you, I feel like there might be parts of myself worth discovering. And because I think Tyler sounds like an amazing kid, and I'd like to know what it feels like to be around someone who loves life the way children do. Mr. Reed. Anthony. Please. Anthony, I appreciate your honesty. I really do. But I have to be careful. Tyler's been through enough disruption in his short life. I can't introduce him to someone who might disappear when things get complicated. What if I promised not to disappear? How could you promise that? You don't even know who you are when you're not being a successful businessman. How can you promise to stick around while you figure it out? The question was fair and painful. Anthony realized he was asking her to take a risk on someone who had never proven himself capable of lasting commitment. You're right, he said quietly. I don't have a track record that would make you feel safe trusting me with your son's emotional well-being. It's not just about Tyler. It's about me too. I've worked hard to build a stable, happy life. I can't risk that for someone who's still figuring out what he wants. After she left, Anthony sat in his newly maintained apartment feeling worse than he had in years. For the first time he wanted someone more than he had ever wanted anything. But he was asking Zara to take a chance on a man who had never proven himself capable of sustaining deep emotional connections. That evening, Anthony did something he hadn't done since college. He went to a bookstore. Not to buy business books or investment guides, but to wander the aisles and see what caught his interest. He found himself drawn to the parenting section, then the self-help area, and finally to a section on emotional intelligence and building meaningful relationships. He left with a bag full of books and a growing understanding that if he wanted to be worthy of someone like Zara and Tyler, he needed to do more than just recognize his problems. He needed to actively work on becoming the kind of man who could offer stability, consistency, and genuine love. For the first time in his life, Anthony Reed had a goal that had nothing to do with money or business success. He wanted to become the kind of person who could be trusted with someone else's heart. Anthony spent the next 2 weeks reading everything he could find about emotional intelligence, healthy relationships, and personal growth. He started seeing a therapist, not because he was depressed, but because he wanted to understand why he had spent 34 years unable to form deep connections with people. Dr. Sarah Chin was nothing like what Anthony had expected. She was direct, practical, and completely unimpressed by his wealth or status. During their second session, she asked him a question that stopped him cold. Anthony, you've told me about wanting to connect with this woman and her son. But what would you bring to their lives? What do you have to offer besides money? Anthony stared at her, realizing he had no answer. I don't know, he admitted. Then that's where we need to start. You can't build a healthy relationship from a foundation of need and emptiness. You have to have something real to offer. Over the following days, Anthony began to explore who he was beyond his business identity. He discovered that he enjoyed cooking, something he hadn't done since college. He found that he had opinions about music, books, and art that had nothing to do with investment potential. He started volunteering at a local literacy program, reading to children one evening a week. The kids at the literacy center were a revelation. They didn't care about his expensive clothes or watch. They just wanted someone to pay attention to them, to listen to their stories about school and friends and favorite animals. Anthony found himself looking forward to those evenings more than any business meeting. One evening, while reading to a group of 6-year-olds, Anthony found himself thinking about Tyler. What kind of stories did he like? Was he shy or outgoing? Did he have friends at school? The questions felt natural and important in a way that quarterly profit reports never had. After 3 weeks without any contact with Zara, Anthony made a decision. He called Henderson Maintenance. "Joan, this is Anthony Reed. I was wondering if I could ask a favor." "Of course, Mr. Reed. What can I do for you?" "I'd like to hire your company for a special project. There's a community center in Brooklyn that works with single parents and their children. They need some maintenance work done, blinds, plumbing, basic repairs. I'd like to cover the cost, but I want it done anonymously." "That's very generous. I can certainly arrange that. There's one more thing. I'd like to request that Zara handle the project if she's willing. She does excellent work, and I think she'd be perfect for a community-focused job like this." Anthony gave Joan the details and contact information for the Sunshine Community Center, a place he had found through his volunteer work. It served low-income families in Brooklyn, offering after-school programs, parenting classes, and support services. Anthony had visited the center the week before and noticed that the building needed significant maintenance work. The plan was simple. If Zara took the job, Anthony would happen to be there volunteering when she arrived. It would give him a chance to see her again in a context that wasn't about him hiring her services. Maybe she would see that he was genuinely trying to become involved in something meaningful. The call came 2 days later. Joan informed him that Zara had accepted the community center project and would begin work the following Monday. Anthony immediately contacted the center's director, Maria Santos, and arranged to volunteer that same day. Monday morning found Anthony more nervous than he had been before any business presentation. He arrived at the community center early, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual expensive suits. The center was bustling with activity: children in the after-school program, parents attending a job skills workshop, elderly residents using the community room for their weekly card game. Anthony was helping set up chairs for a parenting class when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Anthony?" He turned to find Zara standing in the doorway, tool bag in hand, looking completely surprised to see him. "Hi, Zara. What are you doing here?" "I'm here for a maintenance job." "What are you doing here?" "I volunteer here sometimes. I help with the literacy program." Zara studied his face carefully, as if trying to determine whether he was telling the truth. "How long have you been volunteering here?" "About 3 weeks now. I started coming after." Anthony paused, realizing how this might sound. "After our last conversation got me thinking about what I could contribute to the world beyond business." Maria Santos appeared beside them, a warm smile on her face. "Anthony, I didn't know you knew our maintenance worker. Zara, this is Anthony Reed, one of our newest volunteers. He's been wonderful with the children in our reading program." Zara looked even more surprised. "You work with children?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I read to the 6-year-olds mostly." "That's unexpected." Maria laughed. Anthony was nervous his first day. Said he didn't know if he was good with kids. "But you should see him now, the children absolutely adore him. He has this way of making each child feel like the most important person in the room." Anthony felt his cheeks warm with embarrassment and pride. "I should let you two discuss the maintenance work. I'll be in the children's room if you need anything." As he walked away, Anthony heard Maria telling Zara about the various repairs needed throughout the building. He tried to focus on preparing materials for that evening's reading session, but his attention kept drifting to the sounds of Zara working in the main room. Around noon, Anthony was eating lunch in the community kitchen when Zara joined him. "Mind if I sit here?" "Please." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Zara spoke. "So you really volunteer here? This isn't some elaborate coincidence." Anthony met her eyes. "I really volunteer here. But I'll admit, when I heard you were doing work here, I made sure to be here today so I could see you." "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about our last conversation every day for 3 weeks. Because I've been working on becoming the kind of person who might be worthy of your friendship." And because I wanted you to see that I'm serious about changing. What kind of changes are you making? Anthony told her about the therapy, the reading, the volunteer work. He talked about discovering interests and preferences he didn't know he had. About learning to be present in conversations instead of always thinking about the next business deal. That's a lot of change in a short time, Zara said when he finished. Not nearly enough, but it's a start. They were interrupted by a commotion from the children's room. A little boy was crying while other children gathered around him. What happened? Anthony asked as he and Zara rushed over. Tommy fell and scraped his knee, said one of the other children. He's really scared of blood. Anthony knelt down beside the crying boy, who looked to be about 5 years old. Hey Tommy. That looks like it hurts. Can I take a look? Tommy nodded through his tears. The scrape was minor, but the child was clearly frightened. You know what? Anthony said gently. I used to be scared of blood too when I was your age. But then my grandfather taught me a secret about scrapes like this. What secret? Tommy sniffled. They're actually badges of courage. They mean you were brave enough to try something new, even if it didn't work out perfectly. And the best part is, your body is so amazing that it knows exactly how to fix itself. Anthony carefully cleaned the scrape and applied a bandage with cartoon characters on it. There you go, brave guy. That should heal up in no time. Tommy smiled and ran off to rejoin his friends. When Anthony looked up, he found Zara watching him with an expression he couldn't read. What? He asked. That was beautiful. You're really good with children. They're easy to be good to. They don't judge you or want anything from you except attention and kindness. Is that why you started volunteering here? Anthony considered the question. Maybe partly. But also because being around kids reminds me what genuine joy looks like. They get excited about small things. They're curious about everything. They haven't learned to be cynical yet. Tyler's like that. He finds wonder in the simplest things, a butterfly, an interesting shaped cloud, a new word he's learned to read. I'd like to meet him someday, Anthony said quietly. If you think that would be okay. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Anthony, can I ask you something honestly? Always. What do you want from me? From us? I need to understand what you're hoping will happen. Anthony felt his heart racing. This was the conversation he had been both anticipating and dreading. I want to know you, he said simply. Really know you. I want to know Tyler. I want to be part of your lives in whatever way you'll allow. I'm not looking for a casual relationship or a fling. I'm looking for something real and lasting. And what if the real me disappoints you? What if Tyler has bad days or gets sick or acts like a normal 6-year-old who sometimes throws tantrums? What if our life is too ordinary for someone who's used to excitement and luxury? Zara, ordinary sounds like paradise to me. I've had excitement and luxury my whole life and they're empty. What I want is real. I want to come home to people who are genuinely happy to see me. I want to help Tyler with homework and listen to him read new words. I want to know what makes you laugh and what worries keep you up at night. I want to be someone you can count on. And how do I know you won't change your mind when the novelty wears off? It was the same question she had asked before, and Anthony still didn't have a perfect answer. But he had something better now. He had hope. Because for the first time in my life, I found something I want more than anything else I've ever wanted. And I'm willing to work every day to become worthy of it. That evening, after Zara finished her work at the community center, she surprised Anthony by asking if he wanted to get coffee. Not the formal dinner he had suggested weeks earlier, but a simple cup of coffee at the diner across the street from the center. They sat in a worn vinyl booth, drinking coffee that was strong but not particularly good, and Anthony realized he had never been happier in any 5-star restaurant. Tell me about your volunteer work, Zara said. What got you started? Honestly? You did. After our conversation about what I had to offer besides money, I realized the answer was nothing. So I decided to figure out if there was anything else I could be good at. And what did you discover? That I like helping people. That I'm actually pretty patient when I'm not thinking about profit margins. That children are amazing teachers if you pay attention to them. Zara smiled. What have they taught you? That enthusiasm is contagious. That asking questions is more interesting than having all the answers. That the best stories are usually about ordinary people doing extraordinary things out of love. You really have changed. I'm trying to. It's harder than I expected, breaking patterns that have been in place for decades. But it's also more rewarding than I thought possible. They talked for 2 hours, covering everything from childhood memories to current events to future dreams. Anthony found himself sharing stories he had never told anyone, about feeling lonely even when surrounded by people, about wondering if he was capable of being truly loved, about his fear that he had waited too long to learn how to connect with others. What about Tyler's father? Anthony asked when Zara mentioned co-parenting challenges. Do you mind me asking what happened? Zara stirred her coffee thoughtfully. We were young when I got pregnant. I thought we wanted the same things, a family, stability, partnership. But when Tyler was born and reality set in, he realized he wasn't ready for the responsibility. He wanted to keep living like a single man while expecting me to handle everything related to Tyler. That must have been devastating. It was. But it was also clarifying. I realized I'd rather raise Tyler alone than with someone who resented being a parent. Children deserve better than that. How do you do it? Raise a child alone while working full-time? Some days are harder than others. But Tyler and I are a team. We take care of each other. And we've built a life that might not look impressive from the outside, but it's filled with love and laughter and security. Anthony felt a pang of envy. That sounds like everything I've been missing. It's not always easy. There are days when Tyler is sick and I can't afford to miss work. Days when I'm exhausted and still have to be patient and present for him. Days when I worry about money or whether I'm doing enough for his future. You're an amazing mother. How do you know? You've never seen me with Tyler. Because I see how you are with everyone else. You're kind without being weak, honest without being cruel. You see the best in people while still being realistic about their flaws. Tyler is incredibly lucky to have you. Zara looked down at her coffee cup. Can I tell you something that might sound strange? Please. When I first met you, I thought you were probably another wealthy man who was used to getting whatever he wanted. But the more I've gotten to know you, the more I see someone who's never gotten the things that actually matter. What do you mean? Love. Real connection. The feeling of being valued for who you are rather than what you can provide. In some ways, I think you've been more deprived than Tyler and I have ever been. The observation hit Anthony with unexpected force. He had never thought of himself as deprived. He had every material advantage imaginable. But Zara was right. He had been starved of the very things that made life meaningful. I don't want to be that person anymore, he said quietly. I can see that. The question is whether you can sustain the changes you're making when it gets difficult. Because it will get difficult. Real relationships require you to show up even when you're tired, stressed, or dealing with your own problems. I want to try. I want to be someone you and Tyler can count on. Zara studied his face in the dim light of the diner. Anthony, what would you say if I told you I was scared? Scared of what? Of wanting this too much. Of hoping that you're different from other men I've known. Of risking Tyler's heart along with my own. Anthony reached across the table and covered her hand with his. It was the first time they had touched, and he felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with physical attraction and everything to do with emotional connection. I'd say that being scared means it matters to you. And that gives me hope. What if we tried something small first? What if you came to dinner at our apartment this weekend? Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and getting to know Tyler. See how you feel about our real life before we make any big decisions. Anthony felt his heart racing. I would love that more than anything. Saturday at 6? I should warn you, Tyler will probably ask you a million questions and want to show you every toy he owns. That sounds perfect. As they prepared to leave the diner, Zara turned to him with a serious expression. Anthony, I need you to understand something. If you meet Tyler and decide this isn't what you want, you need to be honest about it. I can handle rejection, but Tyler can't handle being abandoned by another father figure. I understand. And Zara? I've never been more certain about anything in my life. The rest of the week passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Anthony found himself shopping for child-appropriate gifts, researching 6-year-old interests, and worrying about making a good impression in a way he hadn't experienced since high school. Friday evening, during his volunteer session at the community center, one of the children asked him why he seemed so happy lately. I'm meeting someone very special tomorrow, Anthony told the boy. Like a girlfriend? Maybe. And her son, who's about your age. Are you nervous? Very nervous. Don't worry, the child said with the wisdom that only 6-year-olds possess. Kids can tell if grown-ups are nice. If you're nice, he'll like you. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, matching Anthony's nervous energy. He changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a casual button-down shirt. He stopped at a bookstore and bought Tyler a collection of adventure stories, then second-guessed himself and bought a science kit as well. Zara's apartment building was modest but well-maintained, in a quiet neighborhood in Queens. Anthony climbed 3 flights of stairs, his heart pounding harder with each step. When Zara opened the door, she was wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked beautiful and nervous. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." Behind her, Anthony could see a small figure peeking around the corner. Tyler stepped into view, a miniature version of his mother, with the same kind eyes and curious expression. "Tyler, this is Anthony. Anthony, this is my son Tyler." Anthony knelt down to Tyler's eye level. "It's nice to meet you, Tyler. Your mom has told me so many wonderful things about you." Tyler studied him seriously. "Are you the one who fixes things?" "No, that's your mom. I just sit at a desk and work with numbers all day." "That sounds boring." Anthony laughed. "It is boring. That's why I like coming to places like this much better." Tyler's face lit up. "Do you want to see my room? I have dinosaurs and books and a puzzle with 100 pieces. I would love to see all of those things." As Tyler grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the bedroom, Anthony caught Zara's eye over the boy's head. She was smiling, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked genuinely hopeful. Maybe, Anthony thought as he let himself be led into the warm, love-filled world that Zara and Tyler had created together, maybe he was finally home. Tyler's room was everything Anthony had expected and more. The walls were covered with dinosaur posters and artwork from school. Books were stacked everywhere, picture books, early readers, and several chapter books that seemed advanced for a 6-year-old. A half-finished puzzle of the solar system covered a small table by the window. "This is my favorite dinosaur," Tyler said, holding up a plastic T-Rex. "His name is Rex, but that's not very creative because all T-Rex are named Rex. Do you know any other names for dinosaurs?" Anthony sat cross-legged on the floor, genuinely thinking about the question. "What about Titan? That means giant in ancient Greek." Tyler's eyes widened. "That's a good name. Titan the T-Rex." He made the dinosaur walk across the carpet, adding sound effects. "Do you know about ancient Greek?" "A little bit. I studied it in college." "Did you like college?" "Some parts." "What's your favorite subject in school?" "Reading. I can read almost anything now. Want to hear me read?" For the next 20 minutes, Tyler read to Anthony from 3 different books, stumbling occasionally over bigger words but pushing through with determination. Anthony found himself genuinely impressed by the boy's ability and enthusiasm. "You're an excellent reader," Anthony said when Tyler finished the 3rd book. "Much better than I was at your age." "Really?" "Mom says reading is the most important thing to learn because once you can read, you can learn anything." "Your mom is very smart." "I know. She knows everything. Well, almost everything. She doesn't know much about dinosaurs, but that's okay because I can teach her." Anthony smiled at the boy's matter-of-fact tone. "What else do you like besides reading and dinosaurs?" "Cooking with Mom. Building things. Playing soccer, but I'm not very good yet. Helping people feel better when they're sad." "Helping people feel better? That's a wonderful thing to like." Tyler nodded seriously. "Mom says everyone needs help sometimes and helping makes you feel good inside. She helps people fix things and I help by being good and not making extra work for her." Anthony felt a tightness in his chest. At 6 years old, Tyler already understood concepts of empathy and service that Anthony was just learning at 34. "Tyler, dinner's ready?" Zara called from the kitchen. The dining area was small but warm with a table set for 3. The meal was simple, spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, and a salad, but it smelled better than anything Anthony could remember eating. "I helped make the sauce," Tyler announced proudly as they sat down. "I got to crush the tomatoes with my hands." "That sounds like the fun part," Anthony said. "It was. Mom let me get messy. Usually I have to be careful, but cooking is different." As they ate, Anthony found himself drawn into easy conversation with both Zara and Tyler. The boy asked thoughtful questions about Anthony's work, his apartment, and whether he had any pets. When Anthony mentioned that he didn't have pets, Tyler looked concerned. "That's sad. Pets make everything better. We can't have pets here because the landlord says no, but someday when we have our own house we're going to get a dog." "What kind of dog?" Anthony asked. "A big one that likes to play and a little one that likes to cuddle. Mom says we have room in our hearts for both." Zara smiled at her son. "We've talked about this extensively, as you can tell." After dinner, Tyler insisted on showing Anthony his homework. The boy's backpack was organized with the precision of someone much older, with folders for different subjects and a planner where he tracked assignments. "Mom taught me to be organized," Tyler explained. "She says when you're organized, you have more time for fun things." "That's very smart. I wish I had learned that when I was your age." "You can learn it now. Mom says it's never too late to learn new things." As the evening progressed, Anthony found himself completely absorbed in Tyler's world. They worked on the solar system puzzle together, with Tyler sharing facts about each planet. They built a tower with blocks, with Tyler patiently explaining the engineering principles he had learned from library books. When it came time for Tyler's bedtime routine, the boy asked if Anthony could stay for story time. "Please, Mom? Anthony reads really good and I want to hear him read the dragon book." Zara looked at Anthony questioningly. "Would you mind?" "You don't have to." "I'd love to." The three of them settled on Tyler's bed, with Anthony in the middle reading about a friendly dragon who helped children solve problems. Tyler listened intently, occasionally asking questions or making comments about the story. When the dragon helped a lost child find her way home, Tyler turned to Anthony. "That's like what you do at the community center, right? You help kids with reading so they can learn about everything." Anthony paused, touched by the connection Tyler had made. "That's right. I never thought about it that way, but helping someone learn to read is like giving them directions to anywhere they want to go." After the story ended and Tyler brushed his teeth, he hugged Anthony goodnight with the unself-conscious affection that only children possess. "Will you come back soon?" Tyler asked. Anthony looked at Zara, who nodded slightly. "I hope so, if your mom says it's okay." "It's okay with me. You're nice and you make Mom smile different." "What do you mean, smile different?" "Like she's happy inside, not just being polite." After Tyler went to bed, Anthony and Zara sat on the couch with cups of tea. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional sound of the boy settling into sleep. "He's incredible," Anthony said softly. "I've never met a child like him." "He likes you too. I can tell." "How can you tell?" "He shared his dinosaurs with you. He only does that with people he trusts. And he asked you to come back, which he's never done with anyone I've dated." "You've dated other people?" "A few. Nothing serious." Tyler's reaction was always lukewarm at best. Usually he was polite but distant. Zara curled her legs under her on the couch. Tonight was different. He was himself with you completely. I was myself with him too. I didn't have to pretend to be interested or fake enthusiasm. Everything about tonight felt natural. How do you feel about our life? The small apartment, the simple dinner, the early bedtime? Anthony looked around the cozy space. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator. Books were everywhere, along with toys and the comfortable clutter of people who actually lived in their space. "It feels like home," he said honestly. "More like home than anywhere I've ever been." "Anthony, I need to ask you something important." "Anything." "If we do this, if we try to build something together, it has to be all in. Tyler needs stability and consistency. I can't have you in and out of his life based on your mood or convenience." "I understand." "Do you? Because it means you'd be choosing to become part of a family. With all the responsibilities and sacrifices that entails. It means Tyler's needs come first, even when that's inconvenient. It means dealing with sick days and homework struggles and growing pains. It means being present for the boring parts, not just the fun parts." Anthony thought about everything Zara was describing. The responsibility felt enormous and slightly terrifying. It also felt like exactly what he had been searching for his entire adult life. "I want all of it," he said quietly. "The good days and the difficult days. The routine and the emergencies. I want to be someone Tyler can count on, and someone you can build a future with." "What about your business? Your lifestyle? You work 12-hour days and travel constantly." "I'll change it. I'll hire people to handle more of the day-to-day operations. I'll limit travel to essential trips only. I'll make sure I'm home for dinner more nights than not." Zara studied his face carefully. "Those are big changes, Anthony. What if you resent them later? What if I don't? What if having a reason to come home makes everything else feel less important? What if being part of your family turns out to be the best decision I've ever made?" For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Then Zara reached over and took his hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "But I'm also hopeful. And I haven't felt hopeful about romance in a very long time." "Neither have I. But sitting here with you and Tyler tonight, I felt something I've never experienced before." "What's that?" "Complete contentment. Like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." As Anthony prepared to leave that night, Tyler appeared in his pajamas, having gotten out of bed for water. "Are you going home now?" the boy asked sleepily. "Yes, but I'll see you again soon." Tyler nodded seriously. "Good. I want to show you my library books next time. And maybe we can make cookies with Mom." "I'd like that very much." As Anthony walked back to his car, he realized that for the first time in his adult life, he was excited about the future in a way that had nothing to do with business or financial gain. He was excited about cookie making and library books and the possibility of becoming part of something larger than himself. The boy who had never had a real home was finally beginning to understand what home actually meant. Over the next month, Anthony began restructuring his entire life around the possibility of being with Zara and Tyler. He promoted his most trusted vice president to handle day-to-day operations, limited his schedule to essential meetings only, and started leaving the office by 5 o'clock every day. The changes didn't go unnoticed. His assistant commented on his improved mood. Business associates remarked that he seemed more relaxed and present during meetings. His sister Emma, during one of their now regular phone calls, said he sounded like a completely different person. "You sound happy," she told him. "Actually happy, not just satisfied or successful." "I'm happy. For the first time in my life, I wake up excited about the day ahead." Anthony had been seeing Zara and Tyler twice a week. Once for dinner at their apartment and once for an outing like the zoo, a museum, or just playing in the park. Each visit deepened his connection to both of them and his certainty that this was what he wanted his life to look like. Tyler had become comfortable enough with Anthony to show his full personality, including the occasional 6-year-old meltdown when he was tired or frustrated. The first time Tyler had a tantrum in front of Anthony, Zara had looked embarrassed and worried about how he would react. But Anthony found that he had infinite patience for Tyler's difficult moments. When the boy melted down over a puzzle that wasn't working the way he wanted, Anthony simply sat beside him and waited for the storm to pass, then helped him find a different approach to the problem. "You're good at this," Zara had said afterward. "Good at what?" "Being a parent. It comes naturally to you." The observation had filled Anthony with a pride unlike anything he had experienced in business. Making Tyler feel safe and supported felt more important than any deal he had ever closed. But as comfortable as he was becoming with Zara and Tyler, Anthony knew there were still challenges ahead. The biggest one came on a rainy Tuesday evening when Tyler got sick at school. Anthony was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed with a text from Zara. "Tyler has a fever. School called me to pick him up, but I'm in the middle of an emergency repair job. My backup sitter is out of town. I don't know what to do." Without hesitation, Anthony stood up from the conference table. "I need to leave. Family emergency." 20 minutes later, he was walking into Tyler's elementary school, having never imagined he would one day be an emergency contact for a 6-year-old. Tyler was lying on a cot in the nurse's office, looking small and miserable. When he saw Anthony, his face lit up despite his obvious discomfort. "Anthony, you came to get me?" "Of course I did. Your mom is stuck at work, so I'm your backup today." The school nurse looked confused. "And you are?" "Anthony Reed. I'm on Tyler's emergency contact list." Anthony hoped this was true, though he and Zara hadn't specifically discussed it. The nurse checked her computer and nodded. "Yes, here you are. Tyler has a fever of 101. He should be fine with rest and fluids, but he can't return to school until he's been fever-free for 24 hours. Anthony carefully buckled Tyler into the car seat that Zara had installed in his Mercedes the week before. Another sign of how their lives were becoming intertwined. "Are we going to your house?" Tyler asked weakly as Anthony drove. "Would you like that? Or would you rather go home?" "Your house. I want to see where you live." Anthony realized this would be Tyler's first time at his penthouse. The boy had expressed curiosity about it, but they had always spent time at Zara's apartment or out somewhere together. When they arrived at his building, Tyler was impressed by the doorman and the elevator, but once they reached the apartment, he looked around with confusion. "Where are your things?" Tyler asked. "What do you mean?" "Like pictures and books and stuff that shows who you are. It looks like a hotel." Out of the mouths of babes. Anthony saw his apartment through Tyler's eyes and realized the boy was absolutely right. Despite living there for 5 years, the space contained almost nothing personal or meaningful. "You're right. I haven't done a very good job of making it feel like home. Maybe Mom and I can help you sometime. We're good at making places feel cozy." Anthony settled Tyler on the couch with blankets and put on a nature documentary about dinosaurs. Then he called Zara to update her on Tyler's condition. "Thank you so much for picking him up," she said, and he could hear the relief in her voice. "I know this wasn't planned and you probably had important meetings." "Zara, nothing is more important than Tyler feeling safe when he's sick. Nothing. I should be done here in about 2 hours. Can you handle him until then?" "We're fine. He's watching documentaries and drinking juice. Take your time." The afternoon passed peacefully. Tyler dozed on and off, and when he was awake, he peppered Anthony with questions about the apartment, his work, and whether he had ever been sick when he was little. "My dad never took care of me when I was sick," Tyler said matter-of-factly during one conversation. "I'm sorry about that." "It's okay. Mom always takes good care of me. And now you're here too." "I'll always be here when you need me, Tyler." "Promise?" The question caught Anthony off guard. Tyler was asking for a commitment that went beyond dating his mother. He was asking Anthony to promise to be a permanent part of his life. "I promise," Anthony said, and meant it completely. When Zara arrived that evening, she found them both asleep on the couch, Tyler curled up under a blanket, and Anthony sitting upright beside him, one hand resting protectively on the boy's back. "How long have they been like this?" she asked Anthony's doorman, who had let her up. "About an hour, miss. The little one woke up crying earlier, and Mr. Reed just sat with him until he fell back asleep. Didn't move a muscle even when his phone kept ringing." Zara felt her heart do something complicated as she watched the two most important people in her life sleeping peacefully together. Anthony looked completely natural in the role of caretaker, and Tyler looked completely secure in his trust. When Anthony woke up and saw her, he smiled softly. "How did the emergency repair go?" "Fine." "How was Tyler?" "Perfect. A little cranky when his fever spiked, but mostly just tired. He kept saying he felt better because I was there." "Anthony, I can't thank you enough. I was so worried about him, and knowing he was with you made all the difference. This is what families do for each other, right? Show up when needed. Is that what we are? A family?" Anthony looked down at Tyler, still sleeping peacefully beside him, then back at Zara. "I'd like to be. If you'll have me." That night, after they got Tyler home and settled in his own bed, Zara and Anthony sat on her couch talking about the day. "You were amazing with him today," she said. "Completely natural, like you've been taking care of sick children your whole life." "It felt natural. When I got your text, I didn't even think about it. I just knew I had to get to him. That's exactly how I feel when he needs me. Like nothing else in the world matters except making sure he's okay." "Is this what love feels like?" Anthony asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "This overwhelming need to protect and care for someone else. This feeling that their well-being is more important than anything else in your life." Zara studied his face in the dim light. "Yes, that's exactly what love feels like." "Then I love Tyler. And I love you. I love the life we're building together, and I love the person I'm becoming when I'm with you both." "Anthony, I know it's fast. I know we've only been doing this for a month. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took his hand. "I love you too. Both Tyler and I do. But there's something I need to tell you, and I don't know how you're going to react." Anthony felt his stomach tighten. "What is it?" "Tyler asked me today if you were going to be his new dad. And I realized I didn't know how to answer him, because we've never talked about what the future looks like." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that sometimes adults need time to figure out important things, but that you care about him very much." "Zara, I want to be Tyler's dad. Not just a father figure or a step-parent, but his real dad in every way that matters. I want to be the person he calls when he's scared or excited or needs help with homework. I want to teach him to drive and help him through heartbreak and walk him down the aisle someday if he wants that." "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Anthony slid off the couch and onto one knee, taking Zara's hands in his. "I don't have a ring yet because this wasn't planned. But I can't wait another day to ask you. Zara, will you marry me? Will you let me be Tyler's father and your husband? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you both how much you mean to me?" Tears were streaming down Zara's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." As they held each other on the couch, Anthony realized that the empty man who had signed divorce papers just a few months ago no longer existed. In his place was someone who had discovered that the greatest wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the love of the people who chose to build a life with you. The transformation was complete. The heart that couldn't feel had learned to love completely and unconditionally. And for the first time in his life, Anthony Reed was exactly where he belonged. 6 months later, Anthony stood in the bathroom of his penthouse apartment, adjusting his tie for the third time. Today was the day he had been both anticipating and dreading for weeks. The day he would legally adopt Tyler. The adoption process had been straightforward since Tyler's biological father had voluntarily relinquished his parental rights. But the emotional weight of the moment felt enormous. After today, Anthony would officially be Tyler's father, with all the legal responsibilities and privileges that entailed. There was a knock on his bedroom door. "Dad? Are you almost ready? Mom says we need to leave in 10 minutes. Dad." Even after months of Tyler calling him that, the word still sent a surge of joy and pride through Anthony's chest. "Coming, buddy. Just making sure I look presentable for the judge." Tyler appeared in the doorway, wearing his best clothes, a button-down shirt and khakis that he had picked out himself for this special day. "You look good, Dad. But you always look good." "Thank you. You look pretty handsome yourself." They had moved into a new house 3 weeks after Anthony and Zara's engagement, a 4-bedroom colonial in a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools and a big backyard. Tyler had been thrilled to finally have space for the dog they had promised him, and they had adopted a golden retriever puppy named Buster just last month. The house was everything Anthony's penthouse wasn't: warm, lived in, full of family photos and Tyler's artwork and the comfortable clutter of people who actually enjoyed being home together. Anthony had never imagined that stepping on Lego pieces and bare feet could feel like such a privilege. "Zara, are you ready?" Anthony called as he and Tyler headed downstairs. "Almost. Just trying to find the camera. I want to document every moment of today." Zara appeared from the kitchen, wearing a blue dress that brought out her eyes and carrying the camera that had become a permanent fixture in their lives. She had been documenting Tyler's childhood with the dedication of a professional photographer, determined to capture every milestone and ordinary moment. "Family photo before we leave?" she suggested, setting up the camera timer. The three of them positioned themselves in front of the fireplace, Tyler in the middle with Anthony and Zara's arms around him. As the camera clicked, Anthony marveled at how natural this felt. 6 months ago he couldn't have imagined himself in a family photo. Now he couldn't imagine his life any other way. The courthouse was busy with people handling various legal matters, but Anthony only had eyes for the small family beside him. Tyler held his hand tightly as they waited for their case to be called, occasionally asking questions about what would happen next. "Will I get a new birth certificate?" Tyler asked. "Yes, buddy. It will have my name on it as your father. And then I'll officially be Tyler Reed? If that's what you want. You can keep your mother's last name if you prefer, or you can hyphenate it." Tyler considered this seriously. "I want to be Tyler Reed. Then we'll all have the same last name like a real family." "We're already a real family," Zara said softly. "The paperwork just makes it official." When their case was called, they stood before Judge Martinez, a kind-looking woman who had clearly handled many adoption cases. She reviewed the paperwork carefully, then looked at Tyler. "Tyler, do you understand what's happening today?" "Yes, ma'am. Anthony is becoming my legal dad, which means he promises to take care of me forever and ever." "And how do you feel about that?" "Really happy. He already takes care of me like a real dad. He helps with homework and reads bedtime stories and comes to my soccer games. He even learned how to make my favorite pancakes." Judge Martinez smiled. "And Anthony, do you understand the commitment you're making today?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm promising to love, support, and protect Tyler for the rest of my life. To be there for him through every challenge and celebration. To be the father he deserves." "Zara, you're consenting to this adoption?" "Absolutely. Anthony has been an incredible father to Tyler from the moment they met. This is just making official what's already true in our hearts." Judge Martinez picked up her gavel. "Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant this adoption petition. Anthony Reed, you are now Tyler's legal father. Tyler Reed, you now have a permanent family who loves you unconditionally." As the gavel came down, Tyler launched himself into Anthony's arms. "We did it, Dad. We're officially a family." Anthony held his son tightly, tears streaming down his face. "We sure are, buddy. Forever and always." The photographer Zara had hired captured the moment. Anthony and Tyler embracing while Zara looked on with joy and love radiating from her face. It would become Anthony's favorite photo, the one he kept on his desk at work and looked at whenever he needed a reminder of what truly mattered. After the courthouse, they went to Tyler's favorite restaurant to celebrate. Over pizza and ice cream, Tyler peppered Anthony with questions about what would change now that the adoption was official. "Nothing will change, buddy," Anthony assured him. "We're already living as a family. This just means it's legally recognized. What about when you and Mom get married next month? Will anything change then?" Anthony and Zara exchanged glances. Their wedding was planned for the following month, a small ceremony in their backyard with just close friends and family. Tyler was excited to be the ring bearer and had been practicing walking slowly down the aisle with Buster. "The only thing that will change is that your mom and I will be married," Zara said. "But we'll still be the same family we are right now." "Good. I like our family exactly the way it is." That evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, Anthony and Zara sat on their back porch, watching the sunset and reflecting on the day. "How does it feel to be officially Tyler's father?" Zara asked. "Like the most important thing I've ever accomplished," Anthony said honestly. Bigger than any business deal or financial milestone. Today I became someone's dad. Someone who will carry my name and my love for the rest of his life. You've been his dad in every way that matters for months now. I know. But there was something powerful about making it legal. About standing in front of a judge and promising to be there for him forever. Any regrets about how much your life has changed? Anthony thought about the question seriously. A year ago, his life had been completely different, centered around work, profit margins, and accumulating wealth. Now his days revolved around school pickup times, soccer practice, and bedtime stories. His weekends were spent at children's birthday parties instead of business dinners. His phone was full of photos of Tyler and family moments instead of stock reports. None, he said firmly. This is the life I was meant to live. I just didn't know it until I met you and Tyler. What about your old life? Do you miss any of it? I miss the simplicity sometimes. It was easier when I only had to think about myself. But easier isn't better. This life is messier and more complicated and more demanding. It's also more meaningful than anything I ever experienced before. Tyler asked me something interesting yesterday, Zara said, curling up against Anthony's side. What was that? He asked if we could have a baby brother or sister someday. He said he wants to help teach a baby all the things he knows. Anthony felt his heart skip. How do you feel about that? I'd love to have more children with you. Tyler would be an amazing big brother. I'd love that too. I want to experience everything with you. Pregnancy, sleepless nights with a newborn, watching our children grow up together. Our children, Zara repeated softly. I love the sound of that. As they sat together in the growing darkness, Anthony reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. A year ago he had been a hollow shell of a man, successful in business but failing at life. He had been incapable of genuine connection, unable to feel love or be loved in return. The transformation hadn't been easy. He had to tear down every emotional wall he had built, challenge every assumption about what mattered in life, and learn to be vulnerable in ways that terrified him. But the reward had been beyond anything he could have imagined. He thought about Tyler, sleeping peacefully upstairs, dreaming of whatever 6-year-olds dream about. Tyler, who had called him dad from almost the beginning, who trusted him completely, who believed that Anthony would always be there when needed. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the joy. He thought about Zara, the woman who had seen past his wealth and status to the lost, lonely person underneath. Who had been patient while he learned to feel, who had risked her own heart and her son's happiness on his potential for change. Who had shown him that love wasn't about what you could provide, but about who you chose to be. Anthony? Zara's voice interrupted his thoughts. Yes. Thank you for fighting for us. For doing the hard work of becoming the man we needed you to be. Thank you for believing I could become him. Inside the house, they could hear Buster's collar jingling as he settled into his bed. Tomorrow would bring the usual routine, breakfast, getting Tyler ready for school, work, dinner together as a family. Simple, ordinary moments that had become the foundation of Anthony's happiness. As they prepared for bed, Anthony caught sight of himself in the bathroom mirror. The face looking back at him was the same as always, but everything behind it had changed. The emptiness was gone, replaced by love and purpose and genuine contentment. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising rain overnight. Anthony smiled, remembering that this had all started with a broken window blind on a gray, drizzly day. Sometimes the most important changes in life began with the smallest, most ordinary moments. He checked on Tyler one last time before heading to his own bedroom. The boy was sleeping peacefully, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, safe and secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally. "Good night, son," Anthony whispered, words he had never imagined saying but now couldn't imagine living without. The billionaire who had felt nothing for any woman had discovered that the greatest fortune wasn't money at all. It was the love of a hardworking single mother and her remarkable son, who had taught him that the heart's capacity for love was infinite once you were brave enough to open it. Anthony Reed finally understood what it meant to be truly wealthy. And he had never been richer in his life.